everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Jordan. I just recently got a 12-inch haircut and this is my September wrap up. So in September I ended up reading 15 books. Of those, only one was 1 star, 3 were 2 stars, 6 were 3 stars, 2 were 4 stars, and 3 were 5-star books. So I'd call that a pretty excellent reading month, being that I had 3 5-stars. I'm really happy with that. And as far as formats go, 6 of the books I already owned and read physically, 3 of the books I borrowed from the library and read physically, 4 books I read via audio through one of the many audiobook services that I use, and 2 books I was actually sent for review and I read them physically. 15 books is a lot of books to talk about, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So the first book that I read this month is The End of Her by Sherry Lapina. This is a mystery thriller. Sherry Lapina writes mystery thriller books. I believe she has 4 other thrillers out, and I have read all of her books. And I'm coming to realize that Sherry Lapina is just not the thriller author for me. I gave this 2 stars. It's very much a suburban, domestic mystery drama type book, and I'm finding out that I really don't like that type of thriller, but lots of people do. So if you like, family dynamics, neighbor dynamics, where everyone is kind of in each other's business and things are all twisted and people are cheating on each other and stuff like that, this has a lot of that, as do most of Sherry Lapina's thrillers. That's just not my favorite, so I did not enjoy this. This one specifically is about these parents who have colicky twin girls, and the man in that relationship is accused by another woman of having killed his first wife, and it goes from there. All kinds of dynamics, like I mentioned. So not my favorite, and unfortunately probably the last Sherry Lapina I'm gonna pick up without seeing other people's reviews on them. It's just not for me, and I don't want to keep giving them bad ratings. And then the next 2 books that I read were actually for a video that I did, which was BookTube Friends Recommend. They were The Kingdom of Back by Marie Lu and Ivy Everdene's Letter to the World by Ashley Herring Blake. Those were recommended by my friend Sam at Sam Says and Gavin at How to Train Your Gavin. Again, I made a whole video about it, so I won't go too much into my thoughts, but Kingdom of Back I ended up rating 3 stars. This is a historical fiction fantasy book, and then Ivy Everdene's Letter to the World I ended up rating 5 stars. I really loved it, and so definitely go check out that vlog if you're interested in hearing my in-depth thoughts, but that is a middle grade contemporary book. And then the next book that I picked up is We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. This is a young adult mystery thriller book that I've heard a lot of really great reviews about on BookTube, and I've had on my shelves for over a year now. For some reason, I just kept putting it off, and I am so glad that I finally picked it up, because this is a 5-star book. And I'm kind of shocked that a young adult mystery thriller could do that, especially one so hyped, but it was so good. This is about this 17 or 18-year-old girl who is from a really wealthy family, and every summer her family goes to this island that they own, and this summer that we're following her is a little different. She had skipped the previous summer, and we're basically finding out why things are so tense for her this summer. The plot twist in this, I don't know how I didn't see it coming. Looking back on it, it definitely is a guessable plot twist, but I didn't guess it, and so therefore it shocked me, and I absolutely loved it. It's a nice short thriller. It's only 220-ish pages long, which is really unique and was kind of refreshing to read such a short, impactful, shocking mystery thriller. So if you, like me, have been putting this off, I definitely recommend giving it a try and seeing if you could be pleasantly surprised by it too. And then the next book that I read is A Deadly Inside Scoop by Abby Collette. I listened to this book on audio. I think I got it through Hoopla. And this is a cozy mystery, which is a subgenre within mystery that I am not too familiar with. But this follows this woman who has just opened her own ice cream shop, and she's opening it at the start of the winter season, which is not ideal for when you want to open an ice cream shop. But it's about her trying to open that shop and be successful, while in the meantime someone is found dead near the shop, and so this mystery comes about. This was a lot of fun in a lot of ways. I loved the setting of like the start of winter, start of it getting cold, but also she's trying to start an ice cream shop, and so it's also cold there. It was just a really unique and fun situation to be reading about. I really liked our main character. The mystery itself I wasn't totally sold on. I also don't love when main characters take on the detective work themselves to try and solve a mystery, which I think is a big part of cozy mysteries. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that that's kind of the theme of cozy mysteries, is a female protagonist, trying to solve the mystery herself. And so I don't want to fault it for that, because that's what it is, and I should have known that going in, but at the same time, it just wasn't my cup of tea. I didn't totally enjoy it for that, so I ended up rating it 3 stars, but I had a lot of fun reading it, and I know the second book is coming out soon, so maybe if I, am looking for another audiobook in the future, I would maybe check out that second book, just because I loved the main character and the setting so much. And then the next book that I read is The Elite by Kira Cass. This is the second book in the selection series. I am still working on a vlog for reading this entire series. In my last wrap up, I read the first one and I said that I didn't really love that one so much. I will say that I liked the second book more than the first one. So the first one I gave 2 stars, the second one I gave 3 stars. I'm not gonna go in depth into my feelings because I am making that reading vlog and that will go very in depth. But this was a slight step up from the first one, but I'm still not loving the series as a whole, so that's why it's maybe taking me a little bit longer to get through all the books, but I am gonna go ahead and plow through and keep reading the series. Then I read All the Missing Girls by Megan Miranda. This is a mystery thriller. I've read quite a few Megan Mirandas. I don't know how many she has out, but I've read maybe 4 of her books, and this is a unique one because this is told in reverse order. So we're following this main character starting on day 15 and then working our way back to day 1, and that is so unique. I wasn't sure how I was gonna like that. I wasn't sure how that was gonna work for a mystery thriller. Obviously your concern there is that if you're starting on the last day, you're gonna find out the plot twist in theory, and so I was very interested to see how she was going to include twists by working backwards, and I really liked this. Definitely was confusing to get into. I find it hard to remember things in thrillers anyway. That's definitely something I have to overcome when reading mysteries, is making sure that I pick up on and remember all the small details, but then you add in the element of going backwards in time and you have to remember not only what's happened but what day it happened and what hasn't happened yet, and all of those things made for a very confusing beginning. But I will say that the end of this book really redeemed it. By about the halfway mark, I was in the groove. I was getting it. I wasn't having those confusion issues anymore, and I was definitely invested, and I really liked the ending. So I ended up rating this 4 stars. One of my favorite Megan Mirandas so far, and I think this is pretty widely regarded as one of her best. And so if you haven't read this book but you like Megan Miranda, or that premise just sounds really interesting to you, I would recommend giving it a try. I'm sure it's not going to work for everyone, but I was pleasantly surprised by how much it worked for me. And then the next book that I read is You Had Me At Ola by Alexis Daria. This is a romance between 2 telenovela stars who are working on a show together, and they're kind of hoping to each make this their breakout role, which is a very cool premise. I am not much of a romance reader. I'm not much of a romance lover, so maybe I'm not the best authority to talk about a book like this. All I can say is that I had fun reading it. Definitely some of it was a little too cheesy, a little too over the top for me. I wasn't necessarily all in for this couple, but it was fun. It was different than any book that I've ever read. I'm gonna end up giving it 3 stars, but I would either recommend it to you if you typically like, you know, those fun, lighthearted romances, or refer you to some other reviews, as well as some Own Voices reviews. This talks a lot about being a Latinx individual in America and on TV. That plays into their romance part of it, and so definitely recommend that you look into some Own Voices reviews who can speak to that representation and how that was addressed and handled within this book. But 3 stars. I'm still glad that I read it. I am glad to own it because this is a beautiful, beautiful cover. And then I read The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley. As you can see, I really went through some of my own TBR this month. I have a lot of physical books. This is a mystery, and Lucy Foley is a very popular author this year. She has written The Guest List, which is also a mystery, just released this year, and I wanted to read this book first, her debut, before getting to that one. But this is an isolated, closed circle mystery book that follows this group of people who are in the remote Scottish wilderness. They're basically in the mountains, they're getting snowed in, they're in these cabins, and you know, someone turns up dead. They have to figure out who it is before the rest of them get killed. This was okay. I was hoping for more. It was a little confusing with the perspectives. We jump between a lot of different people, and I was listening to the audiobook as well as reading this physically, and the audiobook helped because it was a full cast narration and the different narrators had different accents for the different people. For example, some were Scottish and some were English, but it still was just a lot of characters to follow, a lot of characters to keep straight, so that I found a little confusing, and I was overall underwhelmed by the twists. I gave this 3 stars overall. I'm definitely still interested in reading Lucy Foley's next book, just to see how it's similar, to see how it's different, and to see what other twists she can put onto the isolated closed circle mystery genre trope. And then I read 3 books for the Buzzword Readathon. I also made a vlog for that, so I will go ahead and link that. The only book that I read physically or that I own physically and read during that week was Night Film by Marisha Pessel. I was so excited to read this book. Won't go too into my thoughts again because I have a vlog which I will link, but I was disappointed by this. I gave it 2 stars. Too long, too confusing. The payoff was not worth it. Didn't like the ending. Just really was disappointed with my reading experience on this one. And then the other 2 books that I read for that video were The Night Swim by Megan Golden, which I gave 3 stars. This is a mystery book following a podcast host who has a true crime podcast and is following a case unfolding in real time. 3 stars, like I said. I appreciate it has a lot of commentary about rape culture, which was very interesting and refreshing within a mystery thriller for that to be discussed. But still, as a mystery, I was hoping for some more shocking twists and reveals and didn't get that, so 3 stars. And then I also read Long Bright River by Liz Moore. I borrowed this from my library and I've since returned it. This is maybe more of a slow burn, literary type mystery book. We're following this woman who is a cop in Philadelphia, and while she is patrolling her area, which is not exactly the best area of Philadelphia, she's also kind of keeping an eye out for her sister, and then her sister disappears one day. This was surprisingly good for me. I ended up rating it 4 stars. More thoughts in the vlog for a book that it reminds me of and who I would recommend it to, but very pleasantly surprised and very glad that I read this book. And then the next book that I read is Cinder by Marissa Meyer. This is pitched as a science fiction retelling of Cinderella. And I would definitely say it's more fantasy. I was really excited for the science fiction twist on the fairy tale because I love science fiction. We're basically following this girl who is a cyborg, and I listened to this on audio and I kind of ended up just speeding through it. It was not my favorite. It had a lot more to do with like the kingdom and the kingdom politics and high action, kind of trying to save herself, and less science fiction that I was hoping for. So unfortunately was disappointed by this. I gave it 2 stars. I'm not gonna keep reading I think this is the Lunar Chronicles series. I'm not gonna keep reading it. It definitely has a lot of great ratings, so if that does sound like something you're interested in with more of that fantasy type feel, then I would still recommend it. But if you're like me and were interested in it because of the science fiction pitch of it, I would say it's not exactly that, and I was disappointed by it, so I would steer clear if that's the reason you're intrigued by it. And then the last 2 books that I'm going to talk about are the 2 books that I was sent for review. So the first one is I Am a Rock Star by Uma Vanka, and this is a nonfiction book trying to be kind of the universal self-help type book. This did not work for me at all. Unfortunately, this was my 1-star book of the month. And I do not give 1-star ratings often. I do not give them lightly. I really only give them to books that I would absolutely not recommend anyone read. And it's really disappointing to have to give that to a book that I was sent for review. Of course, I am supposed to be honest and I'm doing that, but I still feel bad about it. Basically, why I give this 1 star. First of all, it needs a lot of edits. I am not an editor, I am not an English major, but I could still pick out all kinds of grammatical issues, spelling issues, just basic writing structure and kind of common sense flow issues in this book, if that makes sense, that I know I would revise if I was editing this book, but I'm sure a proper editor would be able to, pick it apart and really make it better from an editing standpoint. Also, I am generally already critical of books that claim to be an overall self-help type book, just because every person's situation is different. There's no way for you to give advice that will work for every single person. And this book really jumps on that and claims that it can solve all of your issues and give you success no matter what industry you're in, no matter what stage of life you're in, no matter what background you come from. It's claiming a lot, and I find that hard to believe, and I found the advice not good enough to live up to that claim. A lot of it's cliche, a lot of it is very, you can do it, just keep trying, which is not that helpful if you've read any other self-help book or article before in your life. And then the third reason that I just would not recommend this is I also found the examples that went with the lessons to not be helpful at all, to not have anything to do with the lessons they're telling. I can give an example. So the first section of this book is on communication and how clear communication is essential, which is true. It's a helpful lesson, though cliche, I would say, again, and kind of obvious. But one example he has here is of this village where snakes are really common, and one night a boy died from getting bit by a snake in the night. And kind of his conclusion of that story was that if the boy and the snake just could have communicated in the same language, they would have worked out their miscommunication and he wouldn't have been bitten and died, which just is not a helpful example. I feel like it had nothing to do with the actual point, which was explaining how human to human communication is important. It just confused me, and there are all kinds of examples like that in this book, and so just so disappointing. I felt really bad giving this bad reviews on Amazon and on Goodreads, but that's what I was sent to do, and so I'm gonna be honest about it. I would not recommend this. But those would be my points to the author. If he's happening to watch this video, it would be to get an editor and do some hard edits on this book, and to take another look at the lessons you're sharing, and specifically the examples you're sharing for each lesson, and really question if they are necessary and if they're getting the point across that you are trying to get across, and that's helpful for your audience. And then on the other end of the spectrum, the other book that I was sent to review is called Guide and Grow Baby's First Year. So this is a very specific niche book. So if this doesn't apply to you, if you're not a parent, see you later. Thanks for a good reading month. But I want to talk about this a little bit. This was actually written by a family friend, so I can't claim that I'm totally unbiased. But she contacted me kind of in helping her develop this book. So I was sent an e-copy of this book to review and to kind of use as I'm raising my daughter, who is right now 9.5 months old, and to let her know what parts were helpful and what parts, you know, could be improved before actually going into printing and publishing this book. So I did provide those reviews, and then I was sent a hard copy of the book once it was published, which is really cool. I actually have a blurb, that's me right there, saying that I think this is a really helpful book and a really good resource for moms and for parents. And so I give this book 5 stars. Like I said, it's very niche, only applies if you have a child who is, you know, less than 1 year old. But I still wanted to include it. If any of you are parents, or you know of a person who's going to be a first-time parent and who could get use out of kind of this guidebook for a parent raising their child through the first year, I would recommend it. So that is it. That is all 15 books that I read in September. Great reading month. October, I have high hopes. If you saw my TBR, I'm reading all the thrillers and I'm well underway. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.